And now, A Native Podcast with Matt and Zach.
And welcome back to another A Native Podcast with Matt and Zach. I am Zach, and with me, as always, is Matt. And I always got to start it off this way, buddy. Matt, buddy, how are we doing today?
Doing pretty well, my man. Doing pretty well. How's life up there in your corner of the world?
It's good. And from the Fort Peck Reservation, it is good. It's 50 degrees here on this January day, which is wild. We were just had negative 30 not too long ago, so that's an 80-degree swing within a couple weeks, which is just nuts to experience because like you're not wearing as much layers. Like I'm still wearing sweatshirt stuff. It's
Yeah.
still 30 what is it, 35 right now, but it's going to get up to 50. But
Wow.
it's crazy to experience that. I mean, it's crazy to experience the like negative 30 to like 20 because that's like a 50-degree swing all on its own
Your
there.
guys' fluctuations are a lot more. Ours are like less of it's a little more temperate.
Yeah. Well, we're out here. We're out on the prairie, the plain. That's where the Fort Peck reservation was set up. Out here. That's where my wife, her family's from. We bought a house here. We live here. We live it, man. It's what it is, but
You're
it's
living the
not bad.
traditional way a little bit because usually the man goes with the woman's people.
Yeah, a little bit. No,
Well,
it's not bad. I got abandoned in Montana. Plus, I like Montana too much to like want to go over to Oregon and live there. And, I like Oregon. Don't get me wrong. I like a lot of places, but Montana's a good home base.
you're a Montana boy for sure.
Yeah, no, I am. But speaking of not Montana, I heard you had some other cold news for us. The Iditarod,
Hey,
you got something cool to talk about.
yeah, my little kind of tidbit fun fact. So this evening kicks off the Iditarod dog sled race, which it starts in South Central Alaska and goes all the way to Nome, Alaska on the West
Yeah.
Coast. And that's that's a really unique event for the viewers. There's a lot of Alaska natives who participate in that and who do it very well, who do very well in it because I mean, they've been doing it the longest, you know.
Right.
But yeah, there's a guy on this series, Life Below Zero, that actually got Rookie of the Year last year and finished
Oh
like
well.
his
Oh
first
well.
time ever running, which is wild.
That
Uh,
is wild. That's cool to see. I mean,
yeah,
but you do get that like the dog has been with native people since the beginning of time, the wolf, the coyote, the domestic dogs. The Chihuahua was native essentially to Mexico. What it descends from. It's funny they give it a different name, but it's like, yeah, it basically looks like a Chihuahua and this is what it was and it descended from this area. So they have that. They have you think about like before horses, there was the travois, the dogs that pulled the travois systems. But then they found that horse here in the Americas that they
yeah,
say that there's an American horse that like predates the Spanish horse to
yeah.
being here. And I could see that with how much the horse is in our culture.
No, oh, completely. And like I just it also like gives natives more credibility. Like, hey, like we were here with the horses longer, both people groups, right? Longer
Right.
than what originally predicted.
No, exactly. It's really cool to see that. But that is not what we're here to discuss and talk about today. Today, we are doing a new kind of one of our series is here on A Native Podcast. It's kind of our tribal nations. And we're going to highlight different tribes, tribal nations, reservations, kind of the 574 federal tribes. There'll be state tribes too, but we got to get through the 500 list first before we get to those, I think. And I think we just kind of picked a dart, threw it at the board, and said we're going to do Hopi. So if you read the title, you saw we're going to talk about Hopi this week, and we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about kind of who they are, where they're at, where they're located, what they got going on. And I know Matt, you have a map for us that you want to pull up. So if you're listening on Spotify where they have video or YouTube where we have video, You're able to see Matt here. He's sharing his screen. He's pulling up the map of the Hopi Reservation. And when you look at the Hopi Reservation here, it lies kind of in the same like 3-state region as the Navajo, even though it's not necessarily in that same 3-state region, because it is a reservation within a reservation. It's a sovereign nation within a sovereign nation within a sovereign nation, if you really think about it. But it is completely uh bordered by the Navajo reservation there, which the Navajo reservation stretches into Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. But when you look at like the Hopi, it's right there in Arizona, surrounded by uh the reservation, the
So,
Navajo reservation. Do you have it? You got it going on?
okay, I think I have it now. So just a moment. I had to change the system here.
Oh,
Preferences.
yeah.
You see it?
So, and what I like about this map here is it shows the present day Navajo reservation, right? Which is the brown and the red, which shows you that Utah, New Mexico, Arizona grab. It shows you the Hopi Aboriginal lands, which is the green, which were like Flagstaff, Arizona, Winslow, Arizona is, and then it shows you where the Hopi reservation is today in Arizona and how it is like kind of chunked out. You have the different, like it's right in the middle of the Navajo reservation. Then you have a little piece kind of away, as well as there's even a little piece of Navajo reservation there. And it has the 3 mesas that are very significant too.
And it's interesting too, looking at this where the green, the Aboriginal land, that's like Flagstaff. That's like the mountains and the like the more
Oh, yeah.
lush parts. And you look at where Hopi is now, and it's on those dry mesas.
Well, people don't get too, like they were trying to round up the natives and push us to those bad lands. You know what I mean? Why's Pine Ridge Reservation sit right next to the bad lands? Because they're like,
Yeah.
we want to give you this because we want the good land essentially for ourselves to exploit it. And we see that happen all throughout the US and the history, which is kind of nuts. Um,
And I
yeah.
wonder too, Zach, and maybe we'll have to do research, is if this is one of the few reservations that's within another one.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It might be.
Yeah, and I like bringing that up first is because like that's what I was getting at, where you're a sovereign nation within a sovereign nation within the US, which is also a sovereign nation, right? So how does the legal stuff work, right? So it's very, very, very different when it comes down to these tribes like that. Um, one of my favorite kind of things to do when you're doing this research and you're looking into these tribes, because like Hopi, again, like we said, we took the dart, we threw it at the board, kind of came up with a tribe there in the Southwest, and we'll talk about them first. Don't really know too much about them, but how we do these dives is we kind of do what we do, research wise, of like, okay, let's break it down. And one of the good resources that the state of Arizona has, and I really appreciate, is the Intertribal Council of Arizona. It's kind of a membership that all the tribes are of Arizona. They're kind of members of, very similar to like Rocky Mountain Tribal Leaders or Great Plains. What's that one called? Great Plains
Great Plains Tribal Chairman's Board.
Tribal Chairman's Board. That's what it is, and that essentially is just how the tribes interact within those regions and state areas with each other. So that way they kind of get news and spread the news the right way. And they have a good introduction of the Hopi, and I'm going to read it here for you and get into it. Uh, the Hopi people trace their history to Arizona more than 2,000 years, but their history as a people goes back many more thousands of years ago. According to their legend, the Hopi migrated north to Arizona from the south, up from which is now South America, Central America, and Mexico. The tribe's teachings relate stories of a great flood and other events dating to ancient times, marking the Hopi as one of the oldest living cultures in documented history. A deeply religious people, they live by the ethic of peace and goodwill. The Hopi Reservation in northeastern Arizona occupies part of the Navajo and Cochino counties and encompasses approximately 1.5 million acres. Having inhabited this high and dry area since the 12th century, the Hopi have developed a unique agriculture practice called dry farming. Instead of plowing their fields, Hopi traditional farmers place windbreakers in the fields as selected intervals to retain soil, snow, and moisture. They also have perfected a special technique to plant seeds in arid fields. As a result, they succeeded in raising corn, beans, and squash, melons, and other crops in a landscape that appears inhospitable to farming. Throughout the Hopi Reservation, every village is an autonomous government. However, the Hopi Tribal Council makes law for the tribe and sets policy to oversee tribal business. And that's essentially like to work in today's world, the tribal council like that. When you think about how some of these tribal councils set up, a lot of them set up similar to how the American government was set up, and even have similar like names. Like down in the Southwest, some of the pueblos are called governors.
Mm.
It looks like they call their main leader a chairman, who is Timothy Nuvanga Gomaya, Nuvangayoma. He is the chairman. He has a vice chairman, Craig Andrews, the tribal secretary, Judith Uvela, the treasurer, Nada Talayumpetwa, and Alfonso Sevica is the sergeant at arms. And then, as they were saying, is they also have the villages, and within the villages, there's their own governments. You have the First Mesa, consolidated villages, the villages of Missionagoni, the village of Spiavalui, Spiavulavi, the village of Upper Moenkopi, the village of Bakavi, the village of Kytokosamovi, Kykotsmovi. Some of the things to do at the Hopi Reservation, some of the attractions include the Hopi villages, which are found both at the base and top of the three mesas dominating the landscape. These mesas project to the south like from the enormous Black Mesa formation, like the fingers on a giant hand. The first mesa, the three villages lying on top of this mesa are Tiwa, Skimovi, Sichomovi, and Walpi, while the Polaka sits at the base of the mesa. Walpi is widely considered the most spectacular of the Hopi villages, as it is terraced in a narrow rock table. Old stone houses appear to cling to the cliffs, overlooking an expansive view that is largely unchanged by the centuries. Second mesa, the three villages are Shungopavi, Sipuloi, that's the Spiaulovi, and Mishongonovi. Most of the religious and ceremonial activities originate from Shungopaivi. However, Sipailovi has the distinction of being the last village established over the Pueblo Revolt, the uprising that saved the Hopi from the possible Spanish reprisal. The third mesa, further west, are found the villages of Kyoktoksmovi, Old Alabi, considered the oldest continuous inhabited village in North America. Bakavi and Hattavela. Moen Kopai is where the branch of Old Orabi was established as a farming village. Later, it became a permanent settlement. In addition to the mesas and villages, the Hopi people are internationally acclaimed as artisans. First mesa is known for their pottery, second mesa is known for their coiled basketry, and the third mesa is renowned for its wicket basketry, weaving, kachina doll carving, and silversmithing. In addition to the scenery and arts and crafts, visitors are welcome to attend most public ceremonies, to observe dances. Social and kachina dances are performed today as they have been for centuries. Be reminded that while you're on Hopi, you are considered a guest. Photographing, recording, or sketching of villages and ceremonies is strictly prohibited. It is critical that guests obey all rules and regulations established by the villages. And then they list, even on the website there, they list various restaurants, arts and craft shops available throughout the reservation. They have a cultural center, which includes a motel and restaurant. They have plenty of art galleries, which would be really cool to see. There are no calendar dates, however, for the Hopi due to the respect for each individual village. However, you may contact the community development offices Monday through Friday in each village for information on what ceremonies are open to the public and what is prohibited in the village. To inquire about receiving general information through mail, you may contact Hopi Cultural Preservation Offices, and it lists their contacts. And yeah, I mean, that's a really good opening, because when you look at some of these places, there is the tourism aspect. There's some really beautiful tourism down there in Navajo land as well as Hopi land in New Mexico.
And Hopi's, like, for the viewers, Hopi's a very unique tribe, like in that, like they're very traditional. Like, I mean, more so than, like, I don't want to claim they're more than others, but they're less prone to like allow outsiders.
Oh yeah. Well, and like the recording, you're not allowed to record, like you're saying, like the recording, some of the religious ceremonies, even like the Pueblos as a whole, like talking to different Pueblo people, they talk about like, yeah, we have our public ceremonies, but then we also have our private ceremonies. You have your own little private kind of get-togethers that they do their own practices. And Hopi is one of those that does have those. And it almost to the point where some families even just have like their own family ceremonies that don't get shared with the larger community.
Exactly. I was gonna share a small tidbit.
Yeah.
My community map. They don't, from doing research, they don't really have a powwow, but they,
Okay.
like I said, they have those village feasts, which are depending on which mesa is allowed for some public. They have a Hopi Arts and Cultural Festival, excuse me, Hopi Arts and Culture Festival, which is in Flagstaff, Arizona, and that is the fourth weekend in August.
Oh,
So they do have one nearby in Flagstaff as like a larger arts and culture festival.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting how they operate
Interesting.
their government as well is very unique.
Well, and like that's the thing too, is like the it I had this conversation with my dad. I thought it was kind of interesting because we were talking about like art,
Uh-huh.
and take like the Kachina dolls, you take like pottery, you take the silversmithing, you take like everything that we've done, like even like our beaded work and stuff, right? And traditionally it all had some sort of meaning, like you got this when you got married, you got this when you became a young man, a warrior, whatever, right? Like they're the different reason for it, and each tribe, each family has their own reasons for different things. But like we as like a Western society have now opened it up even to where the like it's art now, when really it's like, no, that was the birthing pot that they made for when you gave birth.
Like they were using these things for a purpose as opposed to, oh, we're just this gets set on your ledge
Yeah,
above the fireplace. Like,
exactly. I mean, I'm sure since the beginning of time, man has done stuff like that. We've always like, oh, this thing is nice and cool, I'm gonna display it or I'm gonna keep it, right? We've always done that. But when it comes down to like the actual where a lot of that stuff comes from, the art,
well, like,
it's a funny conversation because it was like, no, that was like for use.
I mean, how many of us from other tribe, like how many of us have a Pueblo pot in our home, but we're not Pueblo? Like I
Right.
it's like a centerpiece in my corner display. Like,
Well, and that just to me, like that's some of those trade networks that like people don't realize existed way beforehand, where it's like, yeah, like you would go down to the Southwest and get some like pots and trade maybe some salmon if you're from the Northwest, or trade something that you had that wasn't as common down there. Because it was like, oh, hey, I know I could get these things. And they would. There is evidence of the trade networks. There is evidence of other cultural items being found places. So it's kind of interesting too, how where all this comes from and where it originates.
Did you know there's a new native apparel company?
no, I did not.
It's called Shop LS 574, named after the 574 federal tribes and the Little Shell descendancy of its founders.
Wow, that's really cool, man.
It is. It is becoming a spot to order native apparel by and for natives, working with native designers and teams to help best represent Indian country.
That's awesome, dude.
For sure. Now make sure to go pick up some Native podcast swag as well as other native gear while shopping at shopls574.com.
Oh yeah, and do not forget to use code ANP10 to save on your next order.
That's ANP10. Hey Matt, did you know there's a tribally owned net company?
No, I did not.
Not only are they tribally owned, but Blue Ribbon Nets also creates totally sustainable products. With Blue Ribbon Nets, not only are you getting quality nets, but even eco-friendly ones as well.
That's awesome, dude.
It sure is indeed. Make sure to use code RUGAROO10 on your next Blue Ribbon Net order to save. Again, the code is RUGAROO10, RUGARU10.
I am definitely getting a Blue Ribbon Net now.
Tune in every Tuesday to hear your favorite native podcast.
That's right. A Native Podcast has new episodes every week, ranging from boarding schools to Indian child welfare.
Not only that, but we have Indian country covered from Maine to California and Florida to Alaska, Hopi to Blackfeet and Choctaw to Tlingit, and all those Crees in between.
And all you other natives and non-natives out there, we want to remind you to tune in this Tuesday to A Native Podcast.
Is your res runner in need of new lights? Well, look no further than our friends at Oxteo, an industry leader in LED lights. Make sure to use code RUGAROO on your next set of lights. That's RUGARU.
Another thing I thought was interesting, because we talk about the Hopi, we talk about what's going on down in the Southwest, with the farming. There's a lot of farming, a lot of agriculture going on down there back in the day. And a couple things that come to mind just off the top of my head personally when I think about it is like, think about like some of those rivers down there. They weren't dammed up. There wasn't those reservoirs and different things like that. Like the seasons were a little bit different. The water was different. So being able to farm and how they harvest them, yeah, you're still in the desert, but it was a different type of desert than it is today. I think it's a little more arid in that sense.
Like
But
the plants there were more green.
yeah,
And the spring was longer and stuff like that, right?
right. Well, and they lived down on like these places versus like where you saw the traditional lands, right? There was more land, but we were pushed to, native people were pushed out of that and away from it and away from like the water, away from the nice farm fields.
Forest, even that
Yeah.
area. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're up elevation too up there. People don't realize like how high in elevation it is. But with the,
People don't realize how much it snows there because of that.
oh, there's a ski resort in Flagstaff.
Right.
Yeah. But going back to the farming, that's kind of what they're known for, is their agricultural practices, which date back 4,000 years.
Wow.
They also have some of the products, some people think what they grew corn, which they had 50 different ways to prepare. And they grew like the squash, the watermelon, the Sandia watermelon. You get like that's the color, right? Kind of the
Well,
mountains.
that's just the Spanish name. Is like,
Right.
yeah, like
But you know what I mean, though. Like you still get like they grew everything down there. They made it happen. And it's cool. It really is cool. I know like the Navajo. There's also the sheep, that they make the wool rugs out of. So being so close to them, I wouldn't doubt that the sheep were part of their culture in ways, especially when you go to the wild sheep and you have like the desert bighorn sheep. Like they domesticated sheep, the sheep eaters, the Shoshone people in Yellowstone Park, it's part of the cultures. It's around. You don't, even though it's not too known about, people know about it. One question being, because you're like Navajo, you bring up Navajo because they're so close to them, they border them. People ask, are Hopi and Navajo people the same? They are not the same. They are two distinct Native American tribes. However, they have interacted consistently for generations. At times, these interactions have been violent. This led to the U.S. government intervention in the 1850s, and from this period until the 1970s, there remained a continuous debate between the two Native American tribes concerning their reservation borders. So it comes down to land.
right. Well, and I find it interesting, and as we go forward with these tribe podcasts, like you put groups that didn't really get along like right next to each other or right in the middle.
Well, I'm going to argue that that part of that was for a reason, right?
Yeah.
They were trying to get us to kill ourselves, to fight ourselves. You know, you really look at like the Native Americans before European contact, there really isn't, like, you don't see mass graves. You don't come across like a field of like, oh, there was a battle here and hundreds of thousands or thousands of people died. Like, yeah, there were battles, don't get me wrong, but there weren't the ones that I think the government even portrayed. It was a very peaceful
Yeah.
trade network. You know, we weren't greedy over land
Mhm.
the way that like the Europeans were, and how that conquest
Oh,
led to that. You know, like, oh, we need land, we need resources. The natives traded. They were fine with what they had. They knew what they had. They were
right.
content with it.
And it was like the respect of territories. What you're hitting on is like you respect that over this mountain range, that's that other tribe's territory, and you ask permission to come there or permission when you're coming onto their area, right? It's a respect thing. Like,
No, it is. It really was. And it was like, that's what, like, like you joked earlier at the beginning of the podcast of like me living up here, but it's why like you would marry your and go live with those families to build those relationships, you know, literally.
yep.
Um, Getting into some of the history here, of the Hopi people here. Um, they kind of have a brief timeline that I'll go over, and then I'll kind of get into it here. Um, they have about I saw 6,000 members is what a number said. I don't know what you saw on
Yeah,
your
no,
research.
I saw about the same.
6,000. I like to always any of those numbers like I say like 6,000 give or take 2,000,
Right.
because like, oh, there's a lot of natives, especially in like rural areas like that, that don't fill out their census forms, that aren't counted in those numbers because they you know, like, oh, there's 4 people living in that house, but really there's 18 people living in that house, or 10 people living in that house, you know. um the way that statistics get counted. So I think that one of the better numbers to go to is like that tribal enrollment. Go directly to the tribe and get the tribal enrollment number,
Mhm.
because they'll tell you how many members they have.
No, I agree. Yeah. It's I think with a few of those, like the Navajo, and I don't know what their blood quantum requirement is with Hopi, but like the Navajos are like half.
I
How
think
many
Hope,
how many
I think
core Navajos do you have?
I think Hopi is half.
Hopi, yeah, I think so.
You know, I think part of that is I think it is a half blood quantum.
So how
Uh,
many halves are you not counting?
right. How many quarters,
That's
or how
how
many?
it would
Yeah,
be.
you're half Navajo, half, you know, half Hopi. What does it mean for you? You know, which honestly, if you are, email us at gng@gng.net. Matt will respond to you. We'd love to have you on as a guest on a native podcast with us, so we could talk here about
That'd be a
your
great,
stories.
great interview.
That would be an amazing one. That'd be a fun one to talk about. Blood quantum is interesting because it's a colonial construct that we as tribes have kept, right? You
Mhm.
never asked someone how native they were back then. You know, the Métis up in Canada, which were essentially were some of the white fur trappers, just were adopted into tribes,
Right.
you know, and you became part of that tribe. You know, you were Sacagawea. She married into a family. With, you know, what she became part of that family. Or if you marry, you know, you married into a tribe, you became part of that tribe. There's just different things that today is different. And it's
Right.
interesting because part of that is like, yeah, sure, you have the blood, but what are you doing for the people? What are you doing for the greater good of the tribe, the whole as a tribe? Which is interesting too, but that's a whole nother conversation. We're going to go down the brief timeline. In 1583, the Spanish explorer Antonio de Espejo came by, and found the Hopi supposedly, even though they weren't lost. Um, in 1598, Juan de Onate and men had the Hopi swear allegiance to the Spanish crown. In 1629, the first missionaries encountered the tribe. In 1680, the Pueblo Rebellion occurred when the Spanish tried to eliminate all the Kachina worship. In 1700, Hopi traditionalists killed all the Christian men in Awatobi and destroyed the village. Many living in Awatobi had converted to the Catholic faith. In 1856, Hopi affairs administered by an Indian agent stationed at Fort Defiance in New Mexico Territory. 1874, the first boarding school was established in Keams Canyon. 1882, the Hopi Reservation established. In 1887, 5 years later, Hopi Agency headquarters establishes at Keams Canyon, which derives its name from Thomas V. Keams, who operated the trading post in the canyon until 1889, when he sold his building to the U.S. government. All the land is tribally owned.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Records at tribal headquarters are for currently enrolled members. So to see the members, allotments, annuities, enrollments, employees, courts, leases, police registers, registers of families, and vital records. These records vary from tribe to tribe, so you have to go to the BIA to do that research, or the National Archives if you like to do that. But that's kind of it. There's some history between the Navajo and them on their land dispute, if you want to get into that kind of research, as well as just other things, other schools as well. But that was kind of a brief timeline. What
Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
I thought, go ahead. No, you go ahead, actually.
I was gonna say another thing that comes up with the Hopi a lot is they are known for being distance runners,
Yeah.
a lot of them. And it stemmed from some things traditionally reading about how tribes would have messengers that they would like run messages to another village or another tribe or whatnot. So that a lot of their youth, you have a lot of distance runners come from their community.
Right. No, and short. They're short too.
Yeah, yeah,
Known for being short people.
shorter. Yep.
Short, but for runners, no, you're not wrong. Kind of getting into their history a little bit more. Um, Talking about they began raising livestock introduced by the Spanish who came to the area in the 16th century, especially sheep and cattle. Uh, though the size of the herds is limited by the amount of browse and water available, the Hopis also made extensive use of natural resources on the reservation. For instance, they utilize 134 local plant species for food, grooming, basketry, and housekeeping. Each of the 12 Hopi villages has an autonomous government, which we talked about. When migrating tribes entered Hopi territory on the Colorado Plateau, the Hopis retreated to the tops of the mesas and enlisted the help of the Tiwa Indians from the Rio Grande for protection. The Tiwas helped the Hopis drive out the Spanish missionaries during the Pueblo Revolt of 1680 and eventually became part of the Hopi tribe. However, today there's still a distinction among the villages, and some Tiwas still speak their own native language. Among the migrating newcomers were the Navajos, semi-nomadic hunters and gatherers who probably traveled south from Canada over many generations along the eastern flank of the Rocky Mountains. Over the centuries, Hopis and Navajos have had a complex relationship. Hopi land came under control of the U.S. government with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, when the Navajos returned to the area in 1868 after their forced exile to Bosque Redondo. A treaty with the federal government granted them 3.5 million acres that included their homeland of Canyon de Chelly, about 90 miles east of the Hopi Mesas. Also in the late 19th century, Mormon settlers entered the area, and once the Santa Fe Railroad arrived, towns began springing up uncomfortably near Hopi villages. The Hopis never fought the cavalry. They never signed a treaty for the most part. They avoided interaction with the U.S. government officials. By the late 1800s, U.S. agents wanted to send the Hopi children to boarding schools, but realized they had no jurisdiction because the Hopi villages were not on established Indian reservation land. On December 16th, 1882, President A. Chester Arthur established the Hopi Reservation by an executive order. In a handwritten document, he set an arbitrary boundary between the lines 110 to 111 degrees longitude and west 35 degrees 30 minutes to 36 30 minutes latitude north. The 2.5 million acre reservation did not encompass much of their traditional land, important to ceremonial shrines or their village of Moenkopi. From 1868 to 1934, as the Navajo reservation grew from 3.5 million acres to 16 million acres, it encircled and diminished the Hopi reservation. Today, the Hopi occupies only 1.5 million acres. The arrival of the Santa Fe Railway in northern Arizona, the earliest 1800s, had a profound impact on the Hopi. The railway and the Fred Harvey Company realized the lucrative tourism potential of the Hopi Reservation, especially since it was so near the Grand Canyon. Euro Americans had admired the Hopis for their peaceful attitudes and their arts and crafts. The company brought Hopis to the tourist facility it built at the South Rim's Grand Canyon Village, employing people from the reservation to work at Hopi House and perform dances for visitors. But they also took visitors to the Hopi villages. The companies offered a variety of excursions that took tourists over the Navajopi Road, built in 1924, to the Hopi Reservation, where they could mingle amongst tribal members, shop for souvenirs, and witness cultural events. The Hopis adopted a constitution and created a tribal council in 1936. The federal government disbanded the council in 1943 because it was not enforcing a mandate for livestock reduction to deal with the problem of overgrazing. However, the council was reformed in 1951, mainly in order to create an officiating government body to deal with mineral and water rights. Although most of the Black Mesa, with its large coal deposits, was on the Navajo Nation, both tribes shared mineral and water rights there. By the 1963, the Hopis had approved oil and gas exploration leases for non-Indian cooperations worth several $1 million. In 1966, the Hopi and Navajo tribes signed leases with the Peabody Western Coal Company for mineral rights on 64,000 acres of the Black Mesa. Peabody also gained rights to pump water from an underlying aquifer. The company had a 35-year contract to supply the coal to the 1,500 megawatt Mojave generating station in Laughlin, Nevada, and the Navajo generating station soon to open near Page, Arizona. In 1970, the Peabody Coal Company began strip mining on Black Mesa. This electricity helps provide power to cities in the Southern California, Phoenix, Tucson, and Las Vegas. While revenue from these operations bring in much needed money and jobs, the tribes also suffer from air pollution, environmental degradation, and the decline of their precious aquifer and springs caused by the mines and its power plants. The Hopi still consider themselves primarily farmers, but today almost half of all households have some livestock, and most have income from wage labor or arts and craft sales. The vibrant Hopi culture still draws thousands of tourists to the reservation every year. The Hopis allow visitors to attend some public ceremonies and observe dances.
And now we would like to take you to our segment, Music on a Native Podcast. This week, Stuart James, Speak For.
This is for the kids who never had shit. Sleeping on the floor, they ain't even have a mattress. Y'all cannot imagine. Never felt love, all they've ever known is sadness. This is who I speak for, represent the people. This is for the youngins that need something they can reach for. I pray you never fall. Stay relentless through it all. Whoa. And this is who I speak for, represent the people. Whoa. This is for the youngins that need something they can reach for. Where I'm from, you won't see on television. Take a drive around the res. This is third world living. Imagine just seeing children in the street, no supervision, cause they parents in the house either spun or getting twisted. Some people live in homes where they can't afford cable. I'm sorry for the times that I've ever been ungrateful. My parents stayed sober, but some others weren't so fortunate. Some kids are getting pulled in all directions like contortionists. If you want change, you have to kill your bad habits. The youth with no direction are the ones becoming addicts. They deserve a better future, but we seem to lack the leaders. Only thing that they were shown was it's cool to crack a leader. It hurts to see these youngins walk the streets with no direction, falling victim to these drugs when it could have been prevented. But I can understand that it's hard to have hope when your parents always fighting every day you feeling low. I almost called it quits to hang it up and get a 9 to 5. Some days it gets so heavy I can rarely find a quiet time. My family is the reason I'm alive right now. My family is the reason I ain't high right now. I cut some people off just to make sure that I'm healthy in the next few years. I plan on being wealthy. I knew that it would happen from the second I envisioned it. I just wish my brother could have been here just to witness it. This is for the kids who never had shit. Sleeping on the floor, they ain't even have a mattress. Y'all cannot imagine. Never felt love, all they've ever known is sadness. This is who I speak for, represent the people. This is for the youngins that need something they can reach for. I pray you never fall. Stay relentless through it all. Whoa. This is who I speak for, represent the people. Whoa. This is for the youngins that need something they can reach for.
Yeah, pouring out the alcohol, on the edge about to fall. I'm praying you don't lose your life. I'm praying we go out on tour. The amount of times I fail, no regrets, I count them all. And we know what it feels like to not want to be around no more. That's a double negative if two wrongs can make it right. If this song could save a life, shine horizontal rays of light. If we all could take advice, would they stop and save us twice? We all write our own songs, so it's wrong to plagiarize. Too many have lost and paid the price. Jobs and ways of life. I pray you heal inside, feel the vibes, regain your sight. Yeah, for the social workers, for the child without a shelter. Counsel with your elders before challenges are dealt with. We want houses for the helpless, wellness over Welch's. A couple days and haven't ate, and I know some of y'all have felt this. I've struggled with addictions, drugs and tunnel visions, yet I remain relentless, and I've done it with persistence. I've learned from dumb decisions, money underruns the prisons. Refuse to be a statistic and one that funds their systems. See, we are on a mission, driven towards better living, dreaming of a safer world with no more missing children. I wish some fathers wouldn't bottle up their vengeance, wouldn't take it out on all of us intoxicated kinships. I know it ain't easy, but I know you can get sober, fam. It ain't over, man. If I can make it, I know you can.
This is for the kids who never had shit. Sleeping on the floor, they ain't even have a mattress. Y'all cannot imagine. Never felt love, all they've ever known is sadness. This is who I speak for, represent the people. This is for the youngins that need something they can reach for. I pray you never fall. Stay relentless through it all. Whoa. This is who I speak for, represent the people. Whoa. This is for the youngins that need something they can reach for.
And that was Stuart James, Speak For.
And that's kind of a more in-depth dive to the history.
Yeah. No, well, I know I figured they would be raising sheep that were brought in as well.
Right.
In their own way. I was gonna add to their language comes from the Uto-Aztecan language family.
Right.
A lot of the Southwest tribes stem, and some Nevada tribes even in California stem from that.
Mhm.
It's very closely related to like Nahuatl, which is the Aztec language in Mexico. And I find it interesting, your description, and I know this kind of topic can get a little squirrely with people from these communities, but how the Navajos came south along the Rocky Mountain front, and from what I was reading about the Hopi is they almost came from like the Mayan area north.
Yep.
And so that's very fascinating to me how they like migrated and
how they
stuff.
kind of and then they had this clash over this land,
Right.
which is interesting because the Hopi were there supposedly first, and they got less land, and the Navajo came later. But then you talk to someone from Navajo who's going to say we've been here forever,
Right.
right?
Right.
like
And I
it's
think
interesting.
those modern clashes are because of these like things.
Oh yeah, there's even a really good creation story that I'm going to play for everybody that PBS put on
Oh, cool.
kind of right now. Okay, I'm just gonna put it in.
Okay.
Because it gets into it. That's just like kind of the pause. So we're
You're
pausing right
you're
there.
just you're just gonna add that in then.
Yeah. I'm trying to see. So ready?
Yes.
And that was kind of a story that PBS did about the Hopi creation story, as the precise origin of the Hopi is unknown, although it is thought that they and other Pueblo people descended from the Anasazi people, the ancestral Pueblo, whom the Hopi call Histatomnonom, Hisatsinom, ancient people. Archaeology has revealed that some abandoned pueblos, such as Sikayatiki and Awatovi, were once occupied by Hopi people. Hopi origin traditions tell that their ancestors climbed upward through underground chambers called kivas and lived in many places before reaching their present settlements in this fourth world. Traditionally, Hopi culture emphasized monogamy and matrilineal descent. Hopi people also practiced matrilocal residence, in which a new husband becomes part of his mother-in-law's household. A given pueblo or town might include 24 or more matrilineal clans. These were grouped into several larger social units or pataries, Phatries. The traditional Hopi economy central on farming and after Spanish colonization on herding sheep. The chief crop was corn, and the Hopi also grew maize, squash, and melons, a variety of fruits and vegetables. So that kind of gets into that, but kind of I wanted to get right here. Girls and boys began their ceremonial careers soon after reaching 6 years of age by being inducted into the Kachina religious tradition. Hopi Kachinas represented a wide variety of gods, spirits, departed ancestors, and clouds. During certain ceremonies, they were impersonated by men in elaborate regalia. Women generally took the role of observers during the public aspect of ceremonies, except in events involving one or more of the three um, one or more of the three women's societies. Men had also had the option of joining a number of societies, including those that conducted strenuous tribal initiation and staged an annual winter solstice celebration or soil. So important that the soil was the soil that its leadership was always entrusted to a high official, usually the town's chief. The most widely publicized of the Hopi rituals was the snake dance, held annually in late August, during which performers danced with live snakes in their mouths. Although part of the snake dance was performed in public, visitors saw only a brief, though exciting, portion of a lengthy ceremony, which was conducted privately in kivas. So that was kind of, I wanted to get into their religious, because you wanted to talk about their religion, because a lot of people, kind of after listening to the creation story, talking about that, I know you wanted to talk because they have the 4 different worlds and
Yeah. Yeah, no, and your snake dance segue was perfect. And reading about that, I was like, that's wild. Like,
right.
like, and but yeah, their ceremonies and prophecies, and these are a lot of these prophecies, by the way, are like people who study them, like tidbits of information, like they putting together about it, because the Hopi don't share all the details about this. But what I'm going to share here is kind of a general understanding of it. So the Hopi prophecies, it's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. I recommend viewers, if you get stuck in this rabbit hole for a while, but they go on cycles of time. So basically, the Hopi believe we've suffered 3 previous world cataclysms. The first world was destroyed by fire, a comet asteroid strike, or a number of volcanic eruptions. The second world was destroyed by ice, a great ice age. As recorded by many cultures around the globe, a tremendous deluge destroyed the third world. And there's supposed to be a fourth world destruction, which we obviously haven't hit yet. But so that's kind of their general 4 worlds.
What's the prophecy of the fourth world? How isn't there a prophecy? Don't they say how it'll be destroyed?
Yeah, here's the fourth world. I was gonna say real quick, they also utilize a calendar that is only 260 days, which is a complex system. So going down, sorry, I'm scrolling down here.
Oh, you're fine.
The sacred rituals. I thought it was right here. Okay, here we go. So many Hopi spiritual elders claim that we are living in the final day of the final days of the fourth world. For more than 60 years, different Hopis have predicted various earth changes that signal the conclusion of the current age and the onset of the fifth world. Here's a quote from in 1970, Dan Pachacongva, these names, Sun Clan leader from the village of Hotavilla, who died at age 112, spoke of the deteriorating conditions of our time. And here's the quote: "We have teachings and prophecies informing us that we must be alert for the signs and omens which will come about to give us courage and strength to stand on our beliefs. Blood will flow, our hair and our clothing will be scattered upon the earth. Nature will speak to us in its mighty breath of wind. There will be earthquakes and floods causing great disasters and changes in the seasons and the weather, disappearance of wildlife, and famines of different forms. There will be gradual corruption and confusion among the leaders and the people all over the world, and wars will come like powerful wind. All of this has been planned from the beginning of creation."
Good. It sounds like good old 2023, huh?
It does sound a little bit like but no, it's really fascinating if you dive into it further. Their spiritual leaders knew about the white man like way early coming.
Yep.
They knew about the car. They described it as like a box on wheels or something in their language. Like they knew about that. And so they're very spiritual people. And I don't blame them for being a bit secretive in a sense.
No, as they should be, you know, because people like to exploit that and exploit cultures, and it's good that they have put in the places within their own society to do that within their own. That's also accessing tribal sovereignty.
Exactly. And like with the Hopi, it makes me think, what if like other tribes went a little more like strict, like in a sense, like to their level? Like that'd be interesting, like what that would look like, you know? It'd
Well,
be-
I found a really cool article on their doctrines when you talk about like their religion like this, right? So the Hopis believe the world was created by Taiwa, the Sun Father, and Stoknong and his nephew. The first creature was Koikoya Kokyang Wutui, Spider Woman, which I know I'm butchering these names. I apologize. I really do. I'm bad at names. Who created humanity. As humanity multiplied, it forgot Taiwa and became corrupt, forcing Stokukang to destroy the surface of the world. A small, faithful minority were preserved, though taking shelter in the world, only emerging when the upper world had been restored. The scenario was repeated twice prior to creation of the present fourth world, which Matt talked about the 3 prior worlds. After the creation of the fourth world, people wandered over the earth until they reached the Black Mesa of the Colorado Plateau. Hopi ceremonial practices is governed by the belief in the absolute interdependent relationship between the upper and lower worlds, day and night, summer and winter, alternate between the 2 realms. It is believed that when people are born, they emerge out of the lower world, and when they die, they descend into the lower world. Cooperation between these realms is essential to maintain the cycle of the seasons. The ceremonial cycle of the Hopi calendar is observed in order to maintain this cooperative relationship. Ceremonial dances are made to the spirits of the dead in order that they will reciprocate by sending rain.
Oh wow.
So, like right there, right? It's a little complex way of saying the rain dance, but like it's that belief that all this nature and all this society and everything we do is in that harmony.
Mhm.
It's a connection. It connects us to our ancestors. It connects us to the worlds, and that we must live in harmony in order for things to be right.
Right. And I find it interesting that these prophecies and beliefs are they oddly kind of align with some of what science is saying about the climate change and like it and just how that's playing out and how humans like we're out of balance. I mean, they're
No,
saying
honestly,
the same thing, but in their own way right now. Like,
no, exactly. You're exactly right,
um,
because that is what is happening.
right. Well, and we've heard native people talk and they're like, science is catching up to us. Like in what we knew and what our ancestors and my ancestors knew.
Well, and I talk to Alaska natives about the climate, man. They're like, we're not getting snow when we should be getting snow. It's not freezing when it should be freezing. These fish are acting weird. These moose and bear, because like up there, the like day and night still are the same, right? Like you
Right.
have your long winters where it's dark all day long, or your long summers where it's light all day long. But if the weather isn't cooperating with that, that throws everything for another loop. It's dark and it's not icy. What?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And that's the like, not to get too political again, but people think it's like just warming weather. It's like, no, it's weird, like staggered, unpredictable, like it doesn't mean it's necessarily just hot and that's it.
Right.
Um,
Or yeah, it's more of the extremes and how the extremes happen and how
mhm.
frequently they happen. And it's like we're helping
You
speed that
just
up.
have a 3-degree swing from what normally
In January.
in January.
Like exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's wild, but that's what it is. Um, Kind of to just bring it back to the religion and the Hopi kind of here, kind of wrapping it up here. They have the Kachina dolls we talked about, which they're these really cool figures you can buy. I painted one kind of sort of back here. My own Kachina doll, inspired by the Hopi and their art and their beautiful art that they do. My dad has a couple Hopi Kachina dolls that I used to play with as a kid that I loved, and he would get mad because I'd play with them. I broke one. Hopefully he's not listening right now. But yeah, so but one thing I thought was cool is they have over 250. So like when you compare them to like kind of like the Hindu religion, right? That's kind of like the different gods. But they didn't necessarily believe that these people were gods. It was just that people from another world, right? That connection. How do you connect to them? So like the eagle, right? He represents strength and power. He is the ruler of the sky and the messenger to the heavens. The wolf, a hunter, uses his knowledge to find and capture game animals. The bear represents great power to cure the sick. The deer dances to increase his kind for plenty to eat in the future. So there's so much that means that, because it is like the deer is that survival for the people.
Right.
So there's more. It's a larger religion. The old man, grandfather Kachina, sings songs for a successful growing season. So definitely there's a cool list here on pueblodirect.com. It gives you kind of a list. I'm not going to read all of them. But it kind of talks about the different Kachinas. Definitely pick one up, support a Hopi artist. Etsy is a good place to do that. Facebook Marketplace, maybe. Just make sure, I mean, you're dealing with the artist that you're dealing with, that they're authentic is my kind of thing with that. But kind
Yeah.
of getting into it, Matt.
Right.
Running out of time here. Go ahead. It's our last. We'll just get into kind of our last kind of statement. So if you have something you want to wrap up with about the Hopi and then something beyond that, go ahead.
Yeah, that just kind of you segued into what I was gonna say, which worked. But the supporting the artists is always important. We're in we're in the age, a weird age of some AI art, and like I personally don't know how I feel about that, but we are native artists, or they're putting out their genuine, authentic work. They're working very hard at it. Some of them, it's their survival, and a lot of them in the Southwest, including the Hopi, if they're a big artist, that's how they live. That's how they make their living. And the Arts and Culture Festival, Hopi Arts and Cultural Festival, is the fourth weekend in August every year in
Oh,
Flagstaff.
we'll
So
have to go one of these years.
I've never been to Flagstaff, so maybe we should go.
Route 66, get your kicks, right? That's what they say.
There you go. You see Route 66 and get native culture and art. So
No, I'm about it. I'm about it. Again, I want to thank every single one of you who actually stay. I want to sneeze. Hold on. Oh, excuse me. I want to thank every single one of you who actually stay along with us this long for the full episode. Me and Matt, we're sitting here in our house. You're in your house. I'm in my house. We're doing this the kindness of our hearts. It's a Friday at 5 o'clock. Thought, hey, let's jump on Zoom and talk about the Hopi people, because we want to share that with you guys. We really hope that you take these podcasts and you learn something from them. You take that knowledge and you go just a little bit further with it. You go and learn something a little bit more about the Hopi, or you go and support Hopi artists, or whatever that may be, that you're in it for. But we really hope that you're learning something. We want to be doing our best to be teaching everybody what we can about our culture, Native American culture. It's one of those that doesn't get taught in a lot of American schools. There's a whole group of people out there who don't want to teach the right history and pretend like this land was just found, that people weren't living here before. So that's just kind of our goal, is to educate you guys on some of the correct histories, to make sure you're understanding that not all these tribes are the same. And today's episode, kind of being that first one, is saying, here's a tribe, here's the Hopi. They got some cool beliefs. They got a different religion system. They got a different language system. They got a different belief system. They got all these different things, even though people group us all up into natives. So it's kind of cool. Let's talk about it. Let's learn about it. Let's share it, because that's what's going to make us better. So definitely thank you guys. Thank you for being there. We appreciate you. And until next time, bye-bye.
I know ballers, I know chiefs, I know riders from the east. I know educated natives down to picket in the streets. Middle fingers to police, fuck you, we come in peace. I know red-skinned hippies that be giving me the creeps. I know beauty, I know beach, I know savages and freaks. And I know a couple cousins even bougier than me. No, ain't elite, bougie native, yes indeed. Art exhibit to the club, and we roll it 20 deep. Copper on my neck, gold on my ring, feather on my hat, skin stitched chin. 100 warriors on my back, they be drumming when I sing. Man, there ain't no way around it.
A Native Podcast is produced by G&G Advertising and Quartz Lake Productions.